thanks everybody for being here. As you know, we said in the last months that now in the second part, I would say, of the T-Factor project, the occasions also to have some exchanges and learning opportunities we're going to, increase. And of course, we have our internal exchanges, so some moments where we share our knowledge, and somehow we try also to visit each other, in our respective pilots and advanced cases. But we also have some, I would say, learning occasions that are more aimed at, sharing, I would say, transversal knowledge, on tools and approaches that could be useful to run your activities, or even in general, for, I would say, the work we do independently from T-Factor. So, of course, one already happened. It was the 6th of May. Some of you were already there. So that was, I tell this also for Andrea, our trainer today, that was on regulation and policies for temporary uses in urban regeneration. So it was somehow oriented toward, looking at the spectrum of different opportunities that were in Europe, and examples that were in Europe on this matter. While this second moment with Andrea Caracciolo from the Fundraising School of Rome, you will introduce yourself better than I do, of course, it's somehow an attempt to share some of the key elements of a fundraising strategy, and more specifically of a fundraising strategy for the cultural sector, and also for events, festivals, concerts. So really somehow for what we call prompt and the regular uses, on our pilots. But more in general, let's say, it's also a way to to have a common understanding of what we can do and what can be done on fundraising. And then, of course, we also have Andrea as an expert to somehow share some doubts, reflections, or curiosities we might have on the subject. This one point also, as you can see, not most of us are from T-Factor, but these training moments, we want them to be open also to some other partners from local coalitions, so from the wider group you're working with. So this is also, these moments are an opportunity to somehow share this knowledge with the others, so feel free also in the next ones that will come in next months to invite others. So Andrea, I would leave it to you. The meeting is recorded so that everybody then also later can maybe share it with someone else if you want. And that's it. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you, Dario. Well, good morning to everybody. Welcome, and I'm happy to be here today to join you in this project that you are bringing forward. And today we'll discuss a little bit about fundraising, what's behind it, and how this works. So just briefly, feel free anytime to interrupt me, feel free anytime to ask me to maybe explain better something that I didn't explain sufficiently, and where I didn't make me clear enough. Obviously, fundraising is related also to the country we do raise funds in, and it might there might be slight differences depending on legislation, policies, cultural approach. But let's say that what's behind it and how you develop a strategy is common in every country. So last thing, obviously, you will get the presentation once it is finished. So you don't have now to copy or to write down what's actually written in the presentation, since you will get that. So feel free, just take part, and don't worry about what's written in the presentation. So I will start to share my presentation. Okay. And just a brief presentation about who I am. I'm, as Dario introduced me, I'm Andrea Caracciolo. I'm a consultant and a trainer and an associate of the School of Fundraising di Roma, which is a training and consultancy body. And we work on, especially on developing fundraising strategies. And we do this towards, let's say, all different types of organizations. So from and this changed also in during time. Let's say I'm doing this since 2006, so it's almost 16 years. And let's say when I started, it was mostly about typical organizations working in international cooperation, or organizations working about let's say typically about the health sector, or helping let's say people in need. And this changed in the last years, where we are working a lot with the cultural sector, as Dario was mentioning, and we work a lot also on projects about regeneration, so about the topic about common goods, and probably this is related also to the need that's in different countries, let's say, since usually in Italy, for example, the cultural sector was traditionally 100% public funded, and obviously with the crisis of the public finance, these funds are getting less and less, and obviously organizations have to look at other ways to sustain their activities. So today I work also, for example, with enormous or gigantic cultural institutions, like, for example, we assist the Parco Archeologico del Colosseo, which I don't need to explain to you what they are basically doing. They manage the Colosseum, the Domus Aurea, the Fori, and the Palatine, so one of the biggest archaeological area in Italy. I'm also a former board member of ASIF, which is the Italian Fundraising Association. And the Italian Fundraising Association is basically an association who represents fundraisers in Italy. And apart from that, I represented ASIF in EFA, which is the European Fundraising Association, which is an umbrella organization that represents national fundraising associations. And I served there two terms in the board, and now I'm still member of the Certification Committee of EFA, which is the body that certifies higher education trainings in fundraising across Europe. So we have we set there let's say a syllabus and a framework, and then those courses who respect those elements, they can get a certification, basically. Let's start directly with let's say with the typical thought behind fundraising. And I structured the presentation this morning. We will first speak a little bit about what's behind fundraising and how this works, and what are the challenges behind it. And then we will look a little bit into, we will go a little bit into the techniques, and so we will speak about the markets, we will speak about individual giving, and we will speak about corporate giving. We would have actually more markets to fundraising, since we would have a typical third market, which would be the foundation market, and then we would have a fourth market, which would be the public funds. So just to have a complete overview about what type of markets we're looking into. But today we won't speak about foundations and public funds, since those markets, let's say, are those that are typically more covered from organizations, since it's more related to typically the typical project activity. So usually organizations have these types of skills already in it. So the typical thought about fundraising, and this is an Anglo-Saxon view of fundraising, thinks that this is the natural evolution of fundraising. And so let's say in this type of evolution, we would have a minimalist development of the fundraising and a minimalist view of fundraising, where basically giving was more something related to charity and philanthropy, so something that's basically thought for, let's say, typically rich people. And this phase in this view was basically very much donor-centered. So the donor was at the center of the activity, and let's say the rest was a little bit something that was just walking with it. Then we had in the 70s or in the 80s, this depending on the countries. In the United States, we would have it in the 60s, 70s. In Italy, for example, in the 80s and in the 90s. And we would have a maximalist moment of fundraising and a maximalist view of fundraising. And basically, this moment was very much marketing orientated. And it was the moment where organizations, charities, and organizations trying to raise funds discovered, let's say, the typical marketing tools. So it was the time when organizations started to use massively, for example, the letters, to write to donors and to write fundraising appeals and to try to raise funds. And it's true, in that moment, it was a very good moment for fundraising. And fundraising grew so much in that moment. But let's say it was those organizations who started to use those marketing techniques that grew the most, because people weren't used to become such appeals in their mailboxes, for example. And obviously people tended to react to those appeals, and reacting in fundraising is very often related to donations. So those organizations who used those tools in the right moment had massively benefited from this type of activity. Obviously, today it's not so. It's not the same anymore. We are used to getting fundraising appeals, and probably all of you get at least 4 or 5 appeals every month, especially if you already donated to, gave to some organization. In that cases, you probably get into some database, and those marketing agencies sell those databases to other charities who are looking to find donors. And so basically now today we are used to get lots and lots of appeals. But it was a good moment, and maybe in some of your in your countries those marketing tools have not been used as much as in other countries, and maybe it's a good time to start using those organizations. For example, I'm always making the example in Italy. There is this very small charity, this charity that today is an enormous charity. It's called Lega del Filo d'Oro, but it's a charity basically that started from a small town in a region called Marche in Italy, which and the town is called Osimo. I bet also most of Italians don't know the name of the city or know the place. But still, that organization is today one of the most famous in Italy, for example, and this is related to the fact that they started to use these tools in the right moment, and today they are still benefiting of it because they have lots of donors. And if you work good, and if you are good on working on accountability and on working on making them loyal to you, then you can still work on those donors. And then the last moment was, let's say, and the last moment, which is the moment that we are facing now, it's more called a strategic moment, and basically donations are more related to social investments. And such a phase is very much mission-centered. So the mission is actually at the center of a fundraising activity. And obviously this means that a donor is looking into an operation, an activity that they support, and they want to get some kind of returns as in an investment. In a financial investment, you would want to get a financial return. You would want to get money out of your investment. In this case, since it's a social investment, we don't expect to get money back from our donations, but we expect to get back some type of impact. And so you will now today hear that one of the most important things is to show it, to be able to show impact. And this will actually make a donor more loyal to your organization, and it will make him stay with you for a period of time. But is it actually true? Is this actually true? Because this is, as I told you, is a view that's very much American, let's say it clearly. And but we have a tradition in Europe about philanthropy that roots very much back. And when we speak about fundraising, as said, we often think of charity, typically philanthropy, or in some cases even about privatization in our sector. But as I said, donations have an ancient history in our continent, and not only related to church items, because obviously if we think about fundraising, we have to look into the church, and the church raises funds since 2000 years. So it's not that we can say that it's something that's been invented by Americans, okay? It's something that the church does since ages, since centuries, okay? But the truth is that the roots of civic fundraising are old. In Italy, we can find the examples dating back to 1200 about civic fundraising, and I will show you now some of those examples, and maybe you can relate, or you can find some of those examples also in your country. One of the most ancient histories about civic fundraising and the development actually of health welfare roots back to Tuscany, for example, and it's the birth of something that's called the Misericordie. The Misericordie is actually something that's been invented by basically by a community that thought that there should be some kind of an organization or something that should be able to help all people in need, especially on health issues. And we still have today the Misericordie in Italy, all around Italy, actually, not only in Tuscany, and they still work on those same items, and they always used to do fundraising. This is a typical, as you see in the picture up in the right, it's a typical collection box. You would see still today people around in cities asking people to give something to an organization or to a cause, okay? So as you see, far more back than even the history of when the United States were actually discovered, the discovery of America. Another example is here. It's this is called La Partecipazione, and it's basically a medieval institution that was founded in another small city in northern Italy called Budrio, for example, in this case. And this organization took care of schools. They took care of armed forces. They even took care of theaters and supporting the theatrical activities. And again, also this was basically a project that would take care of community welfare, and especially what was very interesting of it was the introduction of something that today obviously we all look up to, and which is called self-governance. And I bet it's something that's related also to your projects and to your pilot projects. And this about self-governance and about transparency and accountability is actually a theme that still is actual today. In all types of organizations, especially if we want to raise funds, we have to work on transparency and on accountability if we want to make our donors happy. And those organizations that are most successful in fundraising are actually showing some type of accountability on their activities. Sorry. This is another example, again in Tuscany, so I'm not trying to win some support from our friends of Anci Tuscany, but again, another example in 1861 in Prato, so a town near, not far from Florence. Basically, the first popular library was established, and this project led to the establishment of more than 550 popular libraries in 10 years around Italy. And they were all self-financed by all different types of organizations, by churches, by workers' association, in some cases by rich patrons. And in some cases, they integrated, they embedded some type of direct fundraising activity by the community of users. For example, in some cases, they asked some type of money directly from the families. They asked for donation of books. And they were supported, obviously, by rich families, because obviously, if we want to look into a donor, we have to find in a donor 3 different elements. A linkage to the donor, a link to that donor, an interest in our cause, and ability. So the ability is actually given by the possibility to donate, and this is given by having money, obviously. So in that years, obviously, rich peoples could afford a donation, but very interesting was that women were especially involved in those type of support. So even though in lots of countries they still didn't have, women still didn't have lots of rights, but still they were active, very much active in those type of projects. This is another very interesting example of let's say cultural fundraising in this case. And basically, this example is about the establishment of the Teatro Garibaldi in Mazara del Vallo, so a town in the south of Italy, a town in the south of Italy. In the south of Italy is basically, for those who are not Italian, an area where most of the people, Italians, think it's impossible to do something in the south of Italy, okay? And then especially in the cultural sector. And this example is actually very interesting because basically it was the time where the opera was becoming very famous and popular. And obviously, theaters had different meaning in that years than today. A theater would be in that time something that probably today would be more similar to a movie theater. And so all people, not only rich people, were interested in theater, but all types of people, rich and poor people, were interested in such an activity. So basically, the citizenship of Mazara del Vallo, they were saying, we also want our theater in Mazara. We also want to be able to look at operas, okay? And so they went actually to the let's say to the vescovo, so the would be probably the bishop of Mazara in that time. And they said, we want our theater. And the vescovo was saying, yes, we still have some money left over, but actually we were thinking that we would use that money for the port. And Mazara del Vallo is a city, it's a portual city, where basically the city was almost 100% living out of fisheries activities. So obviously the port is something very important. So the bishop said, we thought we would have to use that money to make some type of works on the port. So I will have to ask the fishers and the port walls. And he went to them and asked them, what should I do with this money? Should I use it actually for the port, or should we build with this a theater? And all the port walls and the fishers were saying, no, we want to have a theater as well, but we want to be part of that project. And so basically they said, we want to build pieces of the theaters with the wood of our fisher boats, our old fisher boats. And what you actually see in the picture is actually the theater today. And what you see, the wooden parts, are still the wooden parts that have been built with the wood of the fisher boats. So actually, they didn't only ask to use the money that was actually intended for them for a cultural activity, but they wanted to be part of it. So as you see in this case, participation led actually to other giving. And I think this is a very nice example. Last but not least, in Italy, we got also, for example, the workers' rights through fundraising activities. So, for example, this is an example of the mutual association about workers. So it's called Società Operaia Mutuo Soccorso. And as you see, it was established in 1862. And again, this was supported with donations by other workers. So other workers that started some kind of syndicates or other kinds of organizations that would actually support, for example, workers when they had when they started to strike. Okay, so they would support actually the needs of those strikers and of those workers who didn't get actually the money from the workers and during the time they wouldn't work. Okay, so as you see, civic fundraising roots way back, and it's not something that that's been discovered in the last 50 years, but it's something that actually we can actually discover again, and we can actually use also in our fundraising activities. And we have examples about fundraising in common goods that are still working today, obviously. And before giving you those examples, I would like really to ask you some questions. So I will briefly stop my share, my screen sharing. And I wanted to ask you if any of you ever tried to do some fundraising activities for their pilot project or their project. Did you ever had some experience in this field? And or if you didn't, why didn't you try to do this type of activities? Did you fear something? Did you have some kind of, let's say, did you feel, for example, embarrassed to ask money? This is something that's typically related to asking to fundraising, that people are embarrassed to ask for money, as they were asking for money for them and not for a project or for a cause. Carolina, Rosalie, anybody? I'm speaking to you since you have the camera on. So.
Yeah. There was, otherwise it's a bit of a black void, right?
Yes.
Well, actually, it's also part of my job at WAG to do fundraising. So in that sense, I have some experience. And for the pilot, we are now starting with some fundraising strategies for one of the programs that will happen in 2023, actually, which is a fundraising opportunity for an educational program.
And you're looking into private funds or public funds?
This is a public creative fund.
Okay, public funds.
In this sense, yeah.
Okay,
not private yet.
Okay, and well, but this is interesting since more and more, for example, in Italy, but also in other countries, and also on European funds, for example, they often ask for a piece of co-financing, no, in those public funds, and often we don't have that money to already in our, let's say, belly, and we have to look for to find those extra funds, and obviously fundraising can be the way to find those extra resources or those co-financing projects, and there are also some let's say leverage we can use by telling this to potential private donors, but we will discuss this later. Any other somebody else that wants to share their experience in trying to raise funds?
Well, apart from writing projects, I mean, for goals, right?
Yes, apart from that.
Apart from that, no.
Okay. Well, then maybe we. I hope that at the end of this morning, you will get inspired and go out to try to raise funds. So let's get back to our presentation. Okay. And this is our other examples, as I said, from nowadays about fundraising for common goods. And up left, you see Fondazione Comunità Attiva. This is a nice example about let's say, establishing a health center in an area. Especially, this is in a. If I'd say to people from there, they wouldn't be happy. Let's say a remote valley in northern Italy. It's called Val Canobbina. And for example, in that case, basically, they were facing the cuts in the health sector, and basically, since the health sector is usually managed by the regions in Italy. For example, in that case, the region was trying to optimize, they would say, or we would say to cut some some activities. So they basically cut the money in that valley, and they basically people from that money lost the first health center point in their area. So basically, if a pregnant woman, for example, wanted to get a visit or an exam, she would have to have at least a 1 hour and 15 minutes drive to get to the first center. Okay, so what did they do? Obviously, they protested with the region, and we don't want you to stop lobbying or advocating for your rights or activities. But apart from that, they decided to establish by their own a first health center in their valley, and basically they established a foundation, and this foundation basically lives 100% by private resources. So it's supported by fundraising. Its sustainability is given actually by fundraising activity, and what's very interesting is basically they now have their health center in the valley, and obviously, as everything that's self-governed, which is also transparent, and which is where they have a strong accountability. Obviously, it has high quality and obviously even better use of resources than in the public sector. So in that case, for example, they financed and they are still financing this project with fundraising, through fundraising. The comic on the right, Il Scaraboccio, this is maybe some of you heard about the history. It's the history about the island in the Venice lagoon, Poveglia, and basically at the moment, at some point, the municipality wanted to sell this island to a private. And again, it would have meant, probably would have meant for some big company to buy the island and to build on this island again another 5-star resort on that island. And instead the citizens of Venice decided to organize themselves, and so somebody established an organization. They launched a fundraising appeal to raise money actually to buy the island from the municipality and to make it available again to citizens. So, and not to sell it out to a private company in this case. So again, as you can see in this case, it's this exact opposite fundraising towards privatization. Under the Scarabocchio example, you find an example about il Teatro Tascabile di Bergamo. This is an example of a project we worked on, we consulted for, and basically it's a project happening in Bergamo, for example, and it's a project about the recovery of an old monastery. It's called the Monastero del Carmine. And this project is actually is given by one of those opportunities probably you spoke about on the 6th of May, because it's an instrument that was it's a policy and an instrument that was introduced in Italy, for example, only recently, and it's called the Partenariato Speciale Pubblico-Privato. And in this case, basically, it's a partnership between the municipality of Bergamo and some other private actors, in this case, the theater company, il Teatro Tascabile di Bergamo. And the project is about, it's about regenerating actually the Monastero del Carmine, the Monastery del Carmine, and to make it something available to the citizenship to do obviously theater activities of the Teatro Tascabile di Bergamo. And it's actually a partnership built also on fundraising. So they shared also the fundraising goals in this partnership. So it's not only that the public, in this case, the municipality, gave away the monastery and said, okay, now you think about it, now you find the resources and you regenerate the good, this place. But instead, they shared also the fundraising the fundraising goals, and both actors, so the municipality and the theater, are actually active in finding the resources to regenerate that place. And these are other examples. The one down it's very nice. I just I'm not gonna present the one on top, but the one you see down, it's actually a project that was financed through a tax incentive that was introduced some years ago for the cultural sector, which is called Art Bonus, and it's actually one of the highest tax incentives in cultural giving around in Europe, because you get back in tax credit 65% of what you give to a cultural association. So basically, if you donate 100 euros, you get 65 euros as tax credit that you can use on your tax declaration, for example. And I just put up this example because it's actually, this instrument is called Art Bonus, and if you go on the website of Art Bonus, which is a website that's basically managed, let's say, by the Ministry of Culture in Italy, you will find that there are lots and lots, hundreds of different projects that you can finance, and there are also hundreds of projects actually that are probably from an artistic point of view or an artistic value much more important than the one that you see here, which is called Bagni Misteriosi in Milan. And actually that other projects, for example, didn't raise any money. And in this case, they raised more than 5 million euros, as you can see, through private donation, also through lots of small donations. So I mean 5, 10, 50, 100 euros donations. So I'm not speaking about the $100,000 donations. And why is that? Because actually this was a project that was intended to regenerate an area. This was an old, let's say, thermal sports center, and actually the project was about regenerating this place and remaking also the pool available to the community, to the local community. And actually this project was brought forward by the by a local theater, which is called Teatro Parenti in Milan, which is one of the most famous theaters in Milan. And actually what they used is they actually brought the community of the theater in this project again. And basically it was the community that was already an existing community that was one of the most active in raising funds for this project to make this place available. And actually the Teatro Parenti does its summer activities in this place. So it's not only about regenerating a place, but putting also let's say a cultural project in it, not only about the value of the restoration of the cultural site. Okay. So, any question about this, or if there are no questions, I will carry on. Let me know. No question. Everything clear? Okay, perfect. So, if we speak about fundraising, we have to speak about the definition. This is typically in every training activity. So I won't bother you long with it. There are several different fundraising definitions, and probably all of them are in some way correct. One of the most famous is probably the one given by an American, actually, which is, let me use a little bit of Italian pride, which is, let's say, from the name, I would suggest an Italian American, because he's called Hank Rosso, so the family name doesn't hide his origins, let's say. And his definition is fundraising is the gentle art of teaching the joy of giving. So it's a very rhetoric definition about fundraising, but it contains some important element, especially about the teaching. And this is very important, especially if we relate this to different sectors starting to raise funds. And this is also related to the fact that people have to be taught that they can support some type of organization, especially those areas where those areas in those countries where the public sector decided that those areas would be typically 100% public funded. So the typical, for example, in those countries where the welfare services are very strong, the national welfare services are very strong, or they were very strong, like in Italy, for example, and let's say the cultural sector would have been related to the welfare sector in Italy. So today we can definitely say that the cultural sector is a part of our well-being, the cultural activities. So in some areas we still have to teach potential donors that they can support such a project or such an activity. And this is especially, as I said, if it was already public funded, since we already paid taxes for it. So it has to be somehow explained why should I give something more, especially if I already paid taxes for such areas and such type of projects. So this is Henk Rosso's definition. I wanted to present you also the definition given by our scientific director, which is Massimo Coencagli, which is a much longer definition. And let's read it together, and then let's go briefly into it. So, according to Massimo Coencagli, fundraising is the strategic activity for the retrieval of financial resources to guarantee the durable sustainability of a social cause and the organized collective action needed to pursue it, and to promote its constant development, stating its social identity towards different markets. So let's go briefly into it, and let's try to take what we need to bring home with from such a definition. So as we said, fundraising is a strategic activity. This means that it's not only about techniques, but as any strategy, it has to be developed by the management of an organization. So it's fundraising, it's not something that you just leave up to a junior fundraiser in his office at the end of in his office at the end of the alley. But it's actually that has to involve all sectors, all areas of an organization, and especially the management area. In any organization, the first fundraiser should always be the president of the organization, okay? And this is true in all organizations that are successful in fundraising. And actually, do you know which type of organization are the most successful at present, the most successful organization to raise funds all around the world? Which type, which kind of organization? What do you think? You can guess. It's there's no mistake that can be done. I mean, it's a guess. Try. Dario.
Maybe sports.
Sports. Well, actually, sports are getting lots of money, but not as much as the organization I'm thinking of, and some. Especially if we think about, let's say, in a sports organization, most of the fundraising they would do would be about sponsorships, so about sponsor from the corporate sector. But still, the organization I'm thinking of raise much more money than lots of sports clubs, even the biggest and most famous sports club you can think of. So we have in the chat also some answer.
Yeah, exactly. Medical sector, Patricia was right.
Medical sector was saying Patricia. Well, medical sector is raising lots of money. It's true, especially research sector. If we speak about medical research, for example, cancer research. Adriana says the church. Carolina says religious fundraising. Well, religious fundraising, let's say, what we call it, it's called faith-based fundraising, and yes, they raise lots of money, but no, they're not the most successful organization. Conflict arms, well, yes, in some cases, for example, we saw, for example, in the Ukrainian war now, we see lots of fundraising appeals also to raise that money to support that. Church collects for various causes, says Patricia. Yes, it's true. They church faith-based fundraising. They work on hospitals, on international cooperation, on helping the people in need. So yes, it's true. They have. Dario says schools. Dario, yes, almost. So it's not schools actually. But it's university, so yes, you're correct, Adriana, exactly. It's universities, and actually universities in the United States, because, for example, in Italy, universities raise ridiculously low amount of money. But for example, universities in the United States, try to guess how much does a university from the Ivy League, like Harvard or Yale, how much does such a university raise every year? Millions, says Patricia. Yes, but even more, billions. So let's say Harvard raises every year something around 1.2, 1.3 billion dollars, okay, every year. And imagine that actually, as somebody was stating, there are private universities, so you pay already to get in, and that is not considered fundraising activity. That is considered a fee you are paying, okay? So I'm just speaking about fundraising activities, and those raise enormous, gigantic amount of money. Laura says, who are typically the donors of, say, Harvard? Well, let's say most of the money the universities make, an enormous amount is actually is given by their alumni projects. So ex-students or people who want to get in the alumni network. So those people are the first donors, and lots of corporate giving also they get. But again, even corporate giving in some cases flows through the alumni network, because in some cases ex-alumni, in some cases are owners or CEOs of companies that actually give them to the university. So it's a mix of that. But as I said, they raise enormous amount of money. And in that cases, for example, in those universities, the first fundraiser is said to be actually the dean of the university. And he has to put at least 50–60% of his time in fundraising activities. This doesn't mean that he will be the one writing the letter to raise funds, obviously, but he will do those activities that will facilitate giving, manage relationship with donors, managing relationship, creating relationships with new potential donors, and obviously, I would have said this later. We once spoke with an important dean of a university, and he said, and I think that this is very common in lots of countries. As we said, as we saw in the evolution of fundraising, there is no fundraising without mission, without a mission. So there is no fundraising without a cause. So obviously, everyone wants to think about the cause and wants to be involved about the mission. And as this dean was said, no mission, no money. But we can say also completely the opposite. No money, no mission. So if we, let's say, the managers of our organizations have to think about the mission intensively as they have to think about the money, because those things have to work together. We don't have a money if we don't have a mission, actually, if we don't have the money to work on that mission. Okay, so those fields are very much related. And said, still we have in many countries, those who think about the mission, especially in the cultural sector, think they don't want to be involved somehow in the money matter. But obviously those things have to work together. Otherwise, it's something that won't be feasible. So, as said, it's a strategic activity for the retrieval, obviously, of resources, of money, goods, services, to guarantee what? The durable sustainability of what? A social cause. So it's this is another good important element we want to introduce, this element about the durable sustainability. And as we said before, if we intend donation as investments, obviously you would put money, especially if it's a financial investment. Where would you put money? You would put money in an organization that is actually able to make a profit out of that money, and actually you would put money in an organization that's successful, that will be able to bring in a financial activity that will be able to generate profits for many years. And the same we can say in a social investment. You would want to put money actually in an organization that's able to reach to carry out the mission that they established, and actually that will be able to do it also in the next years. And it's the irony of it is actually that many times we find we see appeals about organizations saying, if you don't give us money, we will close tomorrow, okay, because we don't have money to carry out our projects anymore. But there is actually no worse fundraising appeal that can be done than such an appeal, because would you actually put money in an organization that risks to disappear tomorrow or the day after tomorrow? Probably not, because again, you would want to put money in an organization that will be able to carry out its mission also in the next years and in the next months. So we want actually an organization that will have durable sustainability, that is working obviously on a cause, on a social cause, and that has an organized collective action established to pursue this social cause. So I'm always giving this example. If it's me and my cousin in the basement of my apartment saying that we want to save the world, maybe we don't have the organized collective action that's credible to save the world. Okay, so you would want to see an organized collective action that's actually coherent to the mission you are carrying out. Okay, so all these things are somehow related. And again, how do we bring out this fundraising appeal and this fundraising strategy? Promoting the constant development of this social cause. So we are always promoting something more. We always are wanting to do some steps towards the achievement of this mission, of that mission. And how am I doing this? Obviously, communicating, as Dario was saying it before, communication and fundraising are very much related, obviously, because if we want to raise money, we have to say that we want to raise money. We have to communicate it. So we are communicating this, stating our social identity, how we intend the world, and we are doing this towards what different markets. And this is another element that's related to another very important element in fundraising, which is the so-called funding mix. An organization will be much more healthier the more its funding is mixed up. I could have an organization which is now, which could be today, for example, completely healthy, because maybe I have a private foundation or a company foundation that is supporting me, and this may be 100% funding me. But obviously this brings risks with it. If I have only one, if I'm mono funded, in the eventuality that funder won't fund me anymore, I would get in deep crisis, and I would probably have to close my activities. And instead, if I have a diverse funding mix, which includes maybe public funds, private funds, individuals, corporate businesses, and foundations. And even though maybe if there is 1 year where the companies, where the private sector, the corporations are in crisis, because maybe there is like in past years when we had the economic crisis. For example, in that years, corporate giving was getting much lower than traditionally, and instead those organizations who had individual donors, they could survive because they could somehow manage to get extra funding from the other markets they would look into. Clear? Is this clear about the funding mix? Okay. So we said what fundraising is. So let's say what fundraising is not. So fundraising is not a stopgap. Fundraising is a continuous activity. It's not something that we can start only in the moment where we have a need, where we have a hole, where we are missing funds from some other funders. Fundraising is a continuous activity towards all those markets. And the continuous activity doesn't mean it's not an activity where we go once a year to a corporate business and ask them for money. Okay, this is not a continuous activity. A continuous activity means that we are in a relationship with that donor for 365 days a year. Okay, this means there are constant updates, communication, involvement in activities. Okay, so it's not a stopgap. It's not only sponsors or patrons, but it's a mix of different potential donors. It isn't a peripheral office or activity, but it's actually an activity that has to involve all sectors of an organization, and which has to be led usually by the top manager of an organization, of a project, of a charity. And it's not only raising money, but it's furthermore, it's communication, it's management, because actually we said we want a donor wants today transparency, a donor wants today accountability. So if the common good you are working on is badly managed, why would people give voluntarily to you? Again, as said, donation are volunteer giving, and this is deeply different than taxes, where you don't decide where those taxes go. In this case, donations are actually a way of people to decide what's important for them. And it's interesting because fundraising is somehow also related to the so-called to something that we call the democratization of resources, because actually it gives the people the power to decide what's important, and also some fundraising instrument that we have in different countries. It's actually related to giving the people the opportunity to decide what's important. For example, we have a fundraising tool that's called the percent giving. So basically, it's in Italy, for example, it's called the 5 per mil. So basically, taxpayers can decide 5 per mil of their taxes towards which organization it can go and which charity it can support. And this tool, this instrument, was actually introduced for the first time, for example, in Hungary, and actually it was a 1% of their taxes. And basically in Hungary, for example, it was introduced after the change in let's say in the regime, in the politics, and where basically let's say before everything was typically decided from the center, from the central government, and so the central government introduced this tool to give the taxpayers, the individuals, the opportunity to decide for the first time what's important for you. you can decide directly in this case through your tax declaration which type of organization you want to support. So it's about, as said, communication, management. It's about public relation and managing this public relation and making those public relations grow. It's about quality control and more and more and more. Okay. So fundraising is usually not possible without organizational development, and this is why it's also one of the worst moments to start to raise funds is actually when you are in crisis. You should start to raise funds actually in the moment where your organization is healthy and when it has enough money to start a new activity. It would be like in a let's say, if we want to relate fundraising to some kind of area in a corporate business, it's more, let's say, fundraising is somehow related to marketing and commercial activities. And let's say if you are in deep crisis, it's gonna be difficult to start new commercial activities and to start new marketing activities, because you will have to invest in it. To pay, for example, for the for a communication campaign, to pay to get all the commercial channels and the payment channels open, and so on and so on and so on. And if you are already in a deep crisis and you don't have money to pay the wages, then you are probably already in a desperate situation, and it's actually not the best moment to start a fundraising activity. But again, if it's your only chance to survive, obviously you can try. But let's say in that cases, you would want to look into those potential donors that are already very much involved in your organization and in your activities. It's going to be hard to find new supporters to a project that's already in crisis. Okay. So if we want actually to raise money, we have to face some challenges. We said, and let's say those challenges are related to different areas. And for example, one of the main challenges is related to building a strong social identity, and especially for those of you who have a strong public partner, or even that is already a public subject developing the project. As we said, in Italy, for example, it's uncommon to see public institutions to raise money, especially because they already get taxes. So individuals are used to pay taxes, and those public welfare activities were typically public funded, as we said before. So in some cases, to build a strong social identity, it could be useful to develop a side organization, or for example a charity or some type of organization which can give also some type of tax benefit to those potential donors. A substantial aspect is related to the fact that fundraising is not only about managing a site or a service, it's about a social mission. So we have also to develop our social mission, and very often we see charities, we see institutions or organizations that want to raise money that don't have a mission. And as we said before, if we want to raise money today, we have to have a mission. So we have to develop our mission. And don't tell me your mission is written in your statute, because usually statutes are written by lawyers. I studied as a lawyer, so I can speak badly about lawyers. Okay, so and lawyers obviously don't know a lot, or lawyers or notaries, or in some cases people working on tax declarations, and obviously sometimes statutes are written just in the way that they are as open as possible, so that if you want tomorrow to do something, you can do it, and if the day after tomorrow you want to change topic or activity, you can do it. Okay. And the political aspect is related to the fact that individuals are used actually to take care of common goods. And so this aspect is about perception. And in some cases, you can ask people to join a charity, to become, for example, a member of a charity, of an association. And instead, you can't ask him to become a member of in some cases, of an institution, or a real member. Okay. Some cases we develop, for example, membership programs in some institutions, but let's say those are slightly different. Another very important challenge we have to face, it's about delivering added value. As we said before, ordinary management in some areas is guaranteed via taxes. So how can a public subject or a project where a public subject is involved as a partner or as something else, how can we ask for extra funding to individuals who are already paying taxes to it? This is usually given by showing added value. This added value could be related to an added value given to society, to beneficiaries, to funders itself that are putting money in such an organization. And so if we want to show this added value, we have to design activities that foresee that added value. We have to show this added value. In some cases, we are already producing added value. I can bring you the example of libraries. We worked a lot on libraries, for example, as Scuola di Fundraising di Roma, as consultancy activities. And usually libraries just speak about what they do traditionally. We borrow books, and we manage this activity about borrowing books. And instead, usually you have in a library, you have tons of activities that actually go beyond that let's say mandate, that public mandate, and it's maybe related to activities that are activities for children, activities for migrants, activities for elderly people, and so on and so on and so on. And usually libraries don't show this. You find it out only if you are actually somebody who is a visitor of that library. And which are those values we can somehow generate? Usually added value, we can have different types, but just to give you some type of examples, we could have an added value that's related to so-called personal value, and in this case, it's related to the growth of the individual. This could be related to added knowledge that an individual gets, to emotions that we can produce in an individual, information, positive experiences that an individual can live, the well-being, for example, access to an exhibition, training, and so on and so on and so on. So this could be, for example, personal value we could deliver. We deliver in some cases economic value. In some cases we have impacts on economic turnover, taxes, satellite activities, fiscal advantages. This is just an example. For example, in this case, again, an example in Tuscany, the Lucca Summer Festival in 2017. In this case, this festival, they could actually, they were able to show that they produced an impact for 22.7 million euros for just the municipality of Lucca in 1 year. And this was generated, these profits were generated, these impacts were generated by the festival, okay? So it produces not only participants, but it produces also economic value. In some cases, we produce social value. So we could show the impacts we produce on social cohesion, on empowerment of social systems, on building an identity of a community. And again, as you can see in these cases, those social values are again added values we don't always show, and people are actually keen to support those added values if we show it to them, and if we can actually demonstrate that added value is produced by us. Okay, we produce in some cases relationship value. For example, relationships on social and community relationships. For example, people gathering together, producing a stronger bond between communities, or communities that are actually populating an area. And obviously, another value we can produce is the so-called political value. And in this case, in some cases, for example, there are actually, let's say, public politics that are somehow pursued by institutions. And this again, it depends in every country as it is developed your let's say, your governance and your government, how it is developed. But for example, in some cases, there could be some public politics that are pursued by institutions, and our value could go towards it. So in this case, I showed you, I brought you an example about Fondazione Compagnia di San Paolo, which is actually a foundation of a bank. And actually they support, for example, a project that's related to bringing people closer to reading and to promoting reading activities. Okay, especially for young children or newborn children. So. And last example, last added value we produce, it's the so-called communicational value. So in some cases, we can offer opportunities to open dialogues with stakeholders, or we can reach, we can give to supporters, for example, corporate supporters, the opportunity to reach out to specific targets, or that could be very relevant for their corporate business, or it could be related to our communication tools and channels and how much we can offer on it. Okay, so any question on added value that you want to ask, or any comment that you want to share? Dario, I see that.
Yeah, I have one that may be related to some of the activities our partners are implementing. So how does it work regarding memberships? Because I mean, many of the activities here somehow, even of partners, try first and foremost to attract publics, kind of people that might be relevant for the regeneration projects. So, and I know that membership can be, I mean, somehow also related to fundraising. So I just wanted to know if there are some best practices around that, or some indications around that, something to look at. Yeah.
Well, there are different actually, and first of all, again, we have to look into the legal aspect. What type of members we are, what type of membership we are somehow promoting. For example, in the cultural sector, very often we use the membership tool to find new donors. And for example, again, we have examples of public cultural institutions that develop their membership through side organization. So as we saw before, now when we spoke about the social identity and the legal aspect, in some cases we want to establish another organization to manage those type of membership. So for example, in Rome we have a museum which is called Maxi, or in Turin which is called Museo Egizio. And in those cases, for example, they have membership programs, and actually the membership program is developed and managed through a foundation. So we have the public institution, and they established a private foundation, which is actually a complete private foundation, which works as any private foundation. So they have to respect the laws that are related to private foundations, so on, and they can develop their membership. And actually, again, you could establish also a charity, an association, and you could actually promote real association to your association. Obviously, this could be risky because at some point, if you have an association and you're asking people to become associates for your association, then you have to go into the democratic process and you have to have an AGA, and actually associates could become, take over of your association. So there are also some risks related to those type of activities. In the Parco Archeologico del Colosseo, so in the Colosseum, for example, we launched 1 year ago the membership, and it's actually the first membership that's totally managed through directly from the Colosseum, not through a foundation or other things. And in that case, for example, we manage our let's say basically it's more on a fiscal point of view, it's more a commercial activity. So actually people are buying the membership and they get some service out of it, okay? In the membership, for example, from the Fondazione Maxi or Fondazione Museo Egizio, actually they are donating to become members. So there are also fiscal elements to it, because if you are buying something, the association that is actually selling something will have to pay taxes on it as any commercial activity. If you are giving out the membership, getting towards a donation, in that cases you are not paying taxes on a commercial activity, but it's actually support for your charity. So it depends from country to country and how also this fiscal element is related. But let's say you usually develop those types of membership looking into let's say economic advantages. And in some cases looking into political or aspects, because for example in some cases you are selling some membership, but actually you are somehow asking for a donation to support your organization. And we usually think that our membership, people buy our membership because they are looking into the commercial advantages of it. But this is very risky if you build your membership only based on commercial advantages, because in this case somebody will get your membership only if it's convenient for them. Okay, so I will just balance it out and wait it out and ask me, okay, how much are you asking me? 100 euros. What are the benefits I get? Are they actually worth 100 euros? If they are worth 100 euros, I will buy it, otherwise not. If you are actually building your membership more on a donation-based membership, where actually you are supporting a cause and on a mission. So the first thing is that you are supporting a cause. In that case, people will tend to be more loyal to your organization, and they won't go into this evaluation if it's actually convenient from an economic point of view. And actually, as I said, it's usually a balance between those two aspects. We don't want to say any lie on this, but for example, in lots of libraries where they have already a membership, because in public libraries, if you want to use their services, you have to become a member, and it's a free membership in public libraries, so you don't pay anything. So in some libraries, for example, we introduced a membership that holds also a donation in it. So for example, 10 euros, and we associated also some small advantage, but again, advantages that weren't economic. For example, in some cases, just to give you a glimpse of some example, in some cases, for example, we have presentations in public libraries given by authors or other activities, no? And for example, in some cases, we knew that some presentation was very much, people were looking up for those presentations. And so we said, for example, for those who get this membership pew, it was called Biblio Pew, for example, we have 20 places that are reserved for those, and who can reserve their place one day in advance to the other. And so it's basically showing them that we care about them, okay? Or we ask them what type of activities we should do, or we try to involve them in the management or in the decision, in some type of decisions of our organization. And when we promoted actually the membership, and in this case, well, I can give you also some funny story. When, for example, in some cases, we obviously had to train also the front desk in the libraries, because obviously those were the first promoters of this membership plus card. And actually, we told them what they would have to say, and if individuals asked, okay, what do I get out of this membership? What does it mean? We told them the first thing you have to do is, well, first of all, you are supporting your library. And then you get also this, and this, okay? And very often individuals, the users of the library, this promoter, let's call him like this, the front desk, was saying, well, first of all, you're supporting your library, lots of them already said, okay, this is enough for me. This is already enough for me for subscribing such a membership. And so don't be afraid to promote your cause, your mission, and don't think that you always have to promote to sell something that's more convenient, or that's economically convenient for a buyer or a subscriber. In some cases, people value what you are doing, and if you don't ask them for money, you can't complain if they are not giving money, because people give only if you ask them. And if you don't ask them, they might even think that you don't need the money, because maybe you are already public funded, or you have other resources that are covering your activity. So always remember that people give because somebody is asking them to give. It's very, very rare that people come up alone and they wake up in the morning and they say, oh, let me see, who can I support today? And this is true for every activity. Also the crowdfunding campaigns, we will speak about it later a little bit. People think that it's gonna be enough to put my project on a crowdfunding platform, and then I will see money flow in just because I put my campaign on the money on the crowdfunding platform. But again, somebody of you all ever woke up in the morning and said, let me see what nice social or cultural project I can support today? I bet not. You always eventually you did it only because somebody told you, we are asking people to support this project. Okay, so it's 11:05. I'd say we do a 10-minute break. So we were speaking about the challenges we have to face if we want to be successful in fundraising. And well, of course, we have to understand new donors. Obviously, donors change during time. And this is also why let's say, some organizations are facing moments of crisis nowadays. We spoke about faith-based fundraising, and obviously this was and still is very successful in some cases, especially in some let's say group of people with particular ages. And in that cases, well, what is, let's say, what is common to every fundraising activity? What is essential and what is key in fundraising at all stages, at all time? Something has to be present in every types of volunteer giving. What do you think that is common in all fundraising? What does a donor have to have in an organization he supports?
I would say a list of potential donors, or that donors already existing ones.
Yes, this seen from an organizational point of view, but I mean, instead from an individual, if he will give to an organization, at least, let's say, he will have to trust the organization. And this is why faith-based fundraising was so successful, because obviously a donor trusted his priest, trusted the religious figures. And today trust is more difficult to build. People are less trustful in other people and in other organizations. And obviously also today individuals have much more access to information. They will easily find out everything out about your organization and your project. And so this donation has to be, considered in a continuum with social action, social responsibility, collective action, and civic volunteering. This is already a big change in the typical paradigm, because before commonly we would tend to separate these areas. And especially organizations would think an individual can be either a volunteer, or he can be a donor. And usually those who can't be volunteers can be donors, because they don't have time maybe to become volunteers, or they don't have the skills. So it was either one or the other. And instead today it's common to say that though volunteers are also the first donors of an organization. And even further, if we bring this concept even further, volunteers can be also the most effective first fundraisers of an organization, because who can be actually the best testimonial and the best one telling others how good this organization is. And so we have to understand that donors don't only want to give money, but they want also to be involved in our organization very often. And this means opening up our organizations. And it's not easy, I know, especially because in some cases, some things are technicalities. In some cases, they are political, and it's not so easy to open it up to others to have their say in our organization. But if we want to have donors, and especially if we want to have major donors, big donors who give lots of money, we have to involve them also in the governance of in the government of our organization somehow. So if we want to understand that, successfully understand new donors, we have to be less rhetoric with these donors, because today it's less, let's say, this is actually debated. It's not so pacific. It's not so, let's say, it's still debated if we use more our emotional side or our logic side, rational side. And obviously the interesting thing is now they are starting to use also studies about emotional behavior related to donations. And obviously the interesting thing is that if we ask individuals, how do you decide if you want to support an organization? Is it more based on emotions or more based on a rational point of view? And most of the people tend to think that it's a rational decision, but actually studies show that it's still very much bonded to an emotional decision. So probably it's a good balance again between these two elements, rational and emotional. And probably we conquer new donors also with emotions, but then we make them stay with us with a rational approach. So we have to be less rhetoric, show impact, show that actually their donation is making something change. We have to build mutual trust, since trust is at the base of volunteer giving. And we have to be social accountable for our actions and to be able to show impact. And again, I know it's easy to say and it's harder to carry out such a thing, because impact is not always easy to show, but it's something that will be more and more important for potential donors. Another challenge we have to face, it's something related to social network and networking. And again, there is a good book which is called Societing, if you want to look into it. And basically, it's written by a how do you say in English, sociologo, sociologist, maybe, yes. I hope. See, okay. And well, based on this and on other works, we can say that society is actually structured in social networks. So I'm not speaking about social networks as we intend them today, as Facebook, Instagram, or other social networks, virtual social networks, but I'm speaking about physical social networks. And usually all of us is part of different social networks. It could be related to my religious interest, to my passions. It could be related to my political point of views, and on other aspects. And so being part of a community is essential also for an organization. And again, being part of a community means not only calling the community to come to my institution, to my project, but also going with my project into the community. And we have to think that culture is definitely considered a common good, and this can be interesting for some type of individuals. So actions to be to use this in our favors are to participate in social networks, obviously, and bring the organization, institution, the community. So again, we always tend to think about England and the UK and the United States as those countries where fundraising is more developed. But it was interesting that when, for example, the Leeds Theatre decided to raise funds, the first thing they did was to fetch up a transport and to build a stage on this transport and to bring the theater in those peripheral areas of the city. So to try to bring their activities to those communities that weren't actually coming to the theater. So trying to make also those activities less elitarian, if we would want to say, to explain it somehow. And share the ideas with the community, ask the community what they want. Don't always think that we already know what the community wants, but bring them on in participating in what should we do as an organization for those communities, and don't tend to think that we already know what those communities want. And this will give you also help you in raising funds. For example, we did this, for example, in again in another library which never had fundraising activities, and we developed a campaign using the art bonus, so the instrument I told you before about the tax credit. And the first thing to do was we asked actually libraries users, what should we raise funds for? And we asked them, and they were very they had a very clear idea what we should work on. They asked, for example, for a 3D printer. They asked for a microwave because lots of them were studying, for example, in the library, and maybe they were staying the whole day in the library, and food was an element, was a question for them. So they said, we would like to bring our food at the library and maybe warm it up in a microwave. And the third thing they asked for was, for example, new projectors and new DVD players for showing cinematography projects or something like that. Okay, and actually what we did was actually we tried to raise funds exactly for those projects. So we launched those projects, and then we got back to the library users and asked them, do you want to support those projects? And those were the first donors, because actually they were actually the ones that said those should be the projects we want to raise funds for. Okay, so involve them, make them participate. Don't think that we have already a good idea of what they want. We spoke already about the importance of fundraising. So we spoke about this, about no mission, no money, but also no money, no mission. And we spoke about democratization of resources when we in the first part of this morning. And last but not least, always think about that fundraising means money for a cause, not for an organization, and also that donations generate high consensus respect towards a project. And this means that actually also, if you will want to lobby or advocate for your activities and projects, one thing is to go to institutions and tell them it's our organization, the theater company, and the university that are asking you for this project. Another thing is going to them and telling them it's our organization, it's the university, it's the theater company and 1,000 donors. This will give you also much more leverage when you discuss with institutions, because consensus means for those institutions, for those political institutions, votes. And they are looking into those votes to get those votes. So use it in your favor. Okay, so but now how do we set up a fundraising strategy? And I'm sure lots of you already saw the project cycle, and you are aware how the project cycle works. And basically, what we use to develop our fundraising strategy is a so-called fundraising cycle. And let's go quickly through the different stages. So the first stage is the so-called startup. And in this stage, we have to define the mission. Maybe you think that you already know your mission, but if you never ever had it written down, it can be very confusing. And I suggest, one thing I suggest you can do already this afternoon or tomorrow, if you don't have it, if you don't have your mission already clear and written down, give everybody of your organization a piece of paper and ask them, without copying from each other, ask them to write down which is the mission of our organization or of our projects. And I'm sure you will get, if you have 20 people in your organization, we will have 20 different answers to this mission. And since fundraising is also about coherency, we want to have a very clear message going out. And if we have 20 different people presenting our organization 20 different ways, it will only be confusing for our potential donors, and confusion usually doesn't work well with donations. We have to overcome internal resistance. In some cases, somebody won't agree in starting to raise funds. This is very common in the cultural sector. I still have it when I speak, especially when I speak about transparency and opening the governance of our organization. Some people say, no, the private sector can put money in it, but they don't have to say anything about what we do and how we do it. And obviously this isn't the best way to try to raise money, because it's like going to somebody and telling them your money is good, but your ideas are stupid. And obviously nobody wants to hear somebody saying to them that their ideas are stupid. And again, I can assure you, if you start this process, in some cases you will actually get good ideas from also other partners or potential partners. And we have to involve the whole organization in our fundraising activities. We said fundraising is much more than only asking for money, but it's about the project, it's about communication, it's about management, and about financial aspects, and so on and so on and so on. So everybody has to do their share of work for fundraising. And always think that if an organization raises funds, it's usually because there is somebody working on fundraising. This is a very something very elementary, but that usually organizations tend to forget somehow when they speak about themselves. I very often meet organizations and say, well, no, fundraising doesn't work for us, or no, we don't know, nobody wants to support our sector or our cause or our project. And the first question I ask them is, well, do you have a fundraiser? And let's say 90% of the times they tell me, no, we don't have a fundraising office, or we don't have a fundraiser. So I always tell them, well, why are you then surprised if you don't raise funds, if you don't have a fundraiser? It would be like a company which does maybe shoes, and they don't sell shoes because they don't have a commercial sector in their private company. So it's more or less the same. And again, if we think about universities with the examples I gave you before, well, then you have to think that usually those organizations have a fundraising office that involves 40, 50 people just working on fundraising. Okay, so they raise funds because there is somebody who starts in the morning and ends at night, and who is thinking, how do I actually raise funds and who can I ask funds for? Okay, so don't underestimate this. And so I brought you some an example of a mission about MoMA. So MoMA, all of you know MoMA, Museum of Modern Art. So the mission that MoMA presents is central to the Museum of Modern Art's mission is the encouragement of an ever deeper understanding and enjoyment of modern and contemporary art by the diverse local, national, and international audiences that it serves. So as you see, the mission is clear, stated clearly, and sorry, I have here. So I wasn't lying when I said my daughter is somebody coming, sometimes coming. So sorry, I will move now to another room in just a few minutes. And here is, for example, an example of a fundraising activity about the GIL, which is actually a regeneration process of a building in Rome, a very nice building which was built during fascism. So it's a rationalist building, a rational architecture building, and as you can see here, the project aimed to raise, as you can see, more than 200,000 euros, and they raised only 42,000 euros. And again, I can assure you the project is a very nice project, but I can assure you they don't even have a website about it, and it's nowhere ever clear what they want to do about this building. So no wonder they are not raising money, because the cause here is completely lacking. Okay, sorry, I see a comment in the chat. Rosalie says, but this is of course not possible for small-scale organization working in the meanwhile to pay for a position as fundraisers. For instance, at our location, we work with small foundation where there is only one person on a payroll, and then also not full-time. Would be interesting to understand what means of funding score best of limited efforts, low but steady results. Well, it's a very good question, Rosalie. Well, first of all, I think we have to make a big we have to think at our organization as private corporations. And we have to think that getting a fundraiser has not to be considered a cost, but it has to be considered as an investment. And obviously, if we want to consider our organization as an cultural or social industry, we have to get into the idea that we are facing investments, not costs. So yes, we have to have money to pay a fundraiser, and obviously it has to be considered an investment that after carrying out a fundraising strategy has to cover those costs by the fundraising activities itself. So probably you have to have money to invest at the beginning, but after a time you will get your ROI, your return on investment. And in some cases, actually, there are, for example, foundations that are, for example, paying for capacity building in organization or organizational development. So in some cases, actually, foundations are paying to hire or to develop a fundraising strategy. This is something that is in the past 10 years, lots of foundations are for example financing or even evaluating when granting a grant. because foundations today, foundations have noticed, and it's not something that had to take so much to be noticed, that some projects live just for the time that the grant is existing. And once the grant given by the foundation expires or is finished, some of those projects disappear. And so in some cases we can ask the foundation to use some of that money of the foundation to pay, for example, for a fundraiser, or to develop a fundraising strategy. Or in some cases, I can tell you that some foundations are even evaluating your future fundraising in the process of evaluating your grant, because they say, I will give you the money only if you show me that after 2 years your project is sustainable by itself. So it's actually something that concerns also those subjects who give out money. So I don't know if I answered fully on to your question.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, ideally we are working also with grassroots organizations, so then we can of course explain to them that it's you know, it's an investment, but if you are working with very minimal budgets, there's just no way that they can do it. But I do think that looking for funding that offers a sort of capacity building, or maybe temporarily invites a project developer on the project, is something that could be beneficial. I have no idea about that landscape in Amsterdam, so this might be worthy for us to do. Yeah. So
in Amsterdam, there is actually the association. Since I work with EFA, let's say the member of EFA, it's an organization called Goede Doelen.
Goede Doelen.
Yes. So you can check it out on the internet, and they give also training courses. They give also.
But Goede Doelen it's the organization, because
yeah.
Okay, because it's also a sentence that we would normally use.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the name of the organization as well. Yes. And so, I mean, in some cases, this is also another topic that's very interesting, and it's actually I think it's going to be also the future. In some cases, we had some successful case in the past. We can think also about some sort of concerted fundraising, where more organizations pull up together and they have some type of a common investment on a fundraiser that raises funds for a common project. So we can think also of those types of activities and those types of development project on fundraising. But let's say, to answer just one of the other question, let's say a fundraising strategy has to consider also all the elements that you just said before, Rosalie. So also the capacity of investment, the human resources you can put into fundraising, and let's say the strategy should be developed considering all those elements. So, and this is also why it's so difficult to develop a fundraising strategy, because every strategy has to be tailored on the organization. We don't have a strategy that can be the same for types of organization. So every strategy has to be developed, obviously taking into consideration internal elements and external elements. And so if there is limited investment capacity, you have to develop a fundraising strategy that takes this into consideration. Then again, obviously, if your organization is saying, well, no, but I can take this time, I have to raise 1 million euros in 18 months, this doesn't go with all investment capacity you have. In some cases, it will the analysis will have, and the strategy will have you to say, well, at present, you will be able to get that fundraising goal only if you invest that much amount of money. Okay, so it depends. We could have a strategy that just is tailored based on all those elements, or we can have a strategy based on the goal. And in that case, the strategy will tell you also, well, this will be only possible if you can invest this amount of money, if you have these resources you can pull up, if you have 3 or 4 fundraisers, and so on and so on and so on. Okay. So a mission should definitely actually answer 4 questions. So it should answer, who do I want to serve? What do I want to achieve? How do I want it to achieve? And why do I want it to achieve? Okay. And let's say a mission should answer these 4 questions to be successful. And usually the characteristics of a successful fundraising strategy, a mission, are 3, and it should be feasible. So it should be realistic, reasonably achievable. If it's not reasonably achievable, nobody will join you on this mission. It should be distinctive, since we are in competition with other organizations who tend to raise money. And again, this will depend on every country, but just to give you an idea, in Italy we have, for example, more or less 400,000 registered charities, and I'm speaking only about the registered charities. I'm not speaking about museums, schools, universities, hospitals, archaeological areas, churches, and whatever. Okay, so I'm just speaking about charities. This means that 400,000 means 1 charity every 100 citizens in Italy. And it's a massive amount, and everybody says that they have a mission, and everybody is looking into money, into finding money. Okay, so we are in a competition, and so it should be clear, why should you give it to me and not to another one? Okay, and then it should be motivating, meaning that it should make you want to act. In fundraising, it means to donate. And this is giving you usually, for example, showing urgency, or that it's needed somehow. This is why, for example, catastrophes are so, pass me this wording, are so successful in fundraising. Why? Because it's an emergency. It's something that happens now, and we have to act now. Then the other risk of a catastrophe is obviously that a catastrophe is a catastrophe only in the moment, till the moment that a new catastrophe raises. We saw it, for example, now with COVID. During the pandemic, hospitals started to raise money, and they raised a lot of money. But today we are facing the war, and nobody is speaking about, or at least in Italy, almost nobody is speaking about the pandemic and COVID anymore. So catastrophes have an urgency, but they are actual only till there is no other catastrophe, and then it's not actual anymore. Let me open the chat. And Raquel says, we are now in the process of developing a feasibility study and designing the case statement for IAT.
So that's our master plan. So basically, we hired a consulting, like a fundraising consulting firm, and they're like doing interviews as we speak with like personalities in Portugal to assess to do the feasibility study to see if our goals are realistic, and like they have some like people are attached to it, and then like we're developing the case statement so that we can start the fundraising process itself.
Sounds definitely great, and I think this is something actually that every organization should do. I mean, it's actually what you would do when you open a business, a feasibility study. So we should do this in every of our projects or activities. Then again,
that's what it's called, a business case, no?
Exactly, yeah. A fundraising plan stands to to a charity or to an organization with a social cause as a business plan stands to a private sector, to a private corporate business. So it's exactly the same, actually. Then again, I mean, this is why we want to develop a strategy. In some areas, I always say it, you know, a little bit in an ironic way. In some areas, organization can face failment in a different way, especially, for example, in faith-based project or in the church. A priest can launch, can take the risk of launching 5 different projects, and then if only one is successful, he would say Providence or God decided that that project should be successful and the others no. In our case, we don't have this luxury of launching a project that's not successful. Also because if we launch a project that's not successful, but let's say we launch it, we start to raise funds, we even get some donors, but we don't get to the goal, and we won't be able to carry out the project. And even if we do everything as honest as possible, so we will give back the money even to donors, you will be happy, but I'm sure, or pretty much sure, the next time you will ask him for money, he won't give you money. And this because nobody wants to put his money in a project that's not successful, okay? So always think about this, that when we launch a project, when we also establish a fundraising goal, we should have it clear that we actually are able to reach that goal, okay? So this is very important when we go out public with fundraising appeals or campaigns. Okay, sorry, let me move to another room just quickly. Sorry. Okay, sorry for the this quick break, but it's the effects of smart working and the effects of the schools closing. So it's a terrible combination. Some of you probably know. So, allora, so this was the first step. The second step, well, all of you, I'm sure you already all heard about this step. So it's the analysis of the organization, and what we do in this case, it's the typical SWOT analysis. And since I'm pretty much sure that all of you already have done a SWOT analysis in their lives, well, if you already had a SWOT analysis, you know that we say it a little bit laughing that you can die from a SWOT analysis. Basically, a SWOT analysis is something that you do to have a clearer picture. And actually, at the end, we take so many elements into consideration that instead of having a clearer picture, I have a much more confused picture in my head. So we develop basically a theory where basically we analyze 5 areas of an organization, and those areas are the areas where, let's say, the reasons of a successful fundraising strategy where we can find the reasons behind a successful strategy. And these areas are the area of the product and the mission. So your projects and your activities. Just to give you an idea, obviously there are no correct or incorrect missions. Luckily, let's say almost all missions are legit. Eventually, a mission can be right or wrong for me, but not generally speaking, okay? But obviously, there are some missions where people tend to be more in favor of than others. Some of you said before the health sector, for example, or the health research sector. Obviously, that is a mission that is very much appreciated. Or if we speak about people, children in need. But again, we could have also an organization working on giving working opportunities and being able to bring back into society pedophiles, okay? And I mean, it's not, maybe it's not correct for us, but it's a possible mission. But I'm sure that obviously you won't go into a public fundraising campaign asking people through television to give for such a cause or such a project, okay? You would have other fundraising approaches for such a cause or such a project, okay? Then we have the so-called relational capital, capitale sociale. And basically those are the relationship your organization can put in place. And we have, again, we have individual relationship. Individual relationship means the relationship of the people of the organization. And then we have organizational relationships. And obviously, if the organization is very young, it won't have a very big relational capital because it's a newly established organization. So the only way we can use relationships is using our individual relationships. And why do we need to use relationships? Because relationships build have to build what? Trust. Between two people in a relationship, usually there is trust, and people give because they trust the organization, or they trust the people of the organization. Then we have the third area is about knowledge management. So it's about knowing about how you use all the data you have and all the skills you have. We have the area about communication, and we're speaking about the system of communication, not about our messages, just our messages, but also how I collect our feedback, the feedback I get. And the last area is the organizational area. So this concerns everything related, for example, to economic resources, as we were saying before, or maybe related to human resources you can dedicate on fundraising, or physical resources that you can use for fundraising. Obviously, for example, just to give you an idea, if I, let's say, if I'm managing, for example, a cultural site, I can easily bring donors to my site. If I'm working, for example, in an international cooperation in an area where there is a conflict, well, it's going to be much harder to bring potential new donors or big donors to your project there, okay? So all these elements give you information about what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. And considering that, usually we develop a short-term strategy, which is usually based just on the strengths, because it's those that you can usefully use immediately. And instead, on the weaknesses, we can eventually work to make them become strengths or invest in them. This is why it's not good to to start to raise funds in a moment where you don't have capacity to invest, because you actually could need some, you could need time and money to transform those weaknesses into strengths and to build then a strategy on that. Okay. Third step of the cycle is the analysis of the market. So again, we analyze first, we have an internal analysis, and then we have an external analysis. And here again, we have a SWOT and a PEST analysis. For those who don't know what PEST stands for, it stands for political, economical, social, and technological analysis. And we analyze our potential fundraising targets using the LI, so the linkage, ability, and the interest. And obviously, we analyze, when we analyze the market, when we analyze, let's say, the external market, we analyze the audience, we analyze the competition, we analyze the stakeholders, and we analyze the market, and the market you are working in. So it's very different if you're working, for example, just giving you again an example about maybe not only Italy or Germany. One thing is if you are working, for example, near Düsseldorf, where you have lots and lots of industries, or another thing is if you're working in the ex-DDR area, so Oriental Germany, for example, where you have much less industries. And obviously industries tend, for example, to support in some cases organizations that are working in their geographic area. So obviously we have to take this into consideration when we develop our strategy. After this, we have all the elements to start to plan. So we have our strategic plan, then we have to transform this into an operational plan, and we have to develop and support the communication plan. And let's say till the fourth step in Italy, for example, we are quite strong, because we have to think about, we have to use all our creative brain. And then the fifth step is, let's say, we find in some cases some difficulties. It's the implementation. Basically, we have to implement our operational plan. And obviously, in these cases, we could have to train somebody in the organization. We have to have constant monitoring of our activities. Why? Well, basically, this constant monitoring is based on the fact that we don't have much research in our sector, in our fundraising sector. So as you were saying before, where you do a feasibility study would also take into consideration, for example, a research study about potential donors and so on, and not all organizations can afford this. So usually you have to, let's say, to develop a fundraising strategy, and then you have to adjust the strategy, because it's very hard that the strategy that is developed on paper will be then 100% the same strategy that will be developed in reality. Okay. And so we have to constantly adjust eventually, because something maybe I overestimated something I underestimated, and so on. And I can think also about outsourcing, because when you walk around your city and you see those individuals, for example, that have the T-shirts of organizations and who are so-called direct dialogue individuals, or so-called, it's a so-called face-to-face activity. In that case, for example, those people work for agencies, and those agencies actually work for charities, for example. So it's basically face-to-face activities are very often outsourced. Okay. The sixth step is, for example, assessment. It's based. It's this step related to assessment. So I have basically to evaluate and assess my economic, from an economic point of view, from a potential point of view, and from a retention point of view. And the seventh step, again, is the cycle review. And again, we start again with all the cycle. Okay. Any question on this fundraising cycle? And I see there is one comment. Thorpe says, this is a useful methodology. Is there such thing as a funding model canvas equivalent? Yes, there is a fundraising model canvas. So if you're used to using business model canvas, it's something that you can use. I must admit, I don't love it, fundraising model canvas. But again, it's a personal approach to different models and the use of different models. So if you like business model canvas, you can find online also fundraising model canvas that you can adapt to your organization. Any other question about the fundraising cycle? No question. Okay, so I will continue with my presentation, and we will start with individual giving. So okay, here. Okay, so before we speak about individual giving, just a quick question. How do we consider individual giving? Because very often individual giving is very much underestimated. Because people tend to think individual giving, why should I put any effort in finding a donation of 10 euros when I can look into a donation of 100,000 euros or 10,000 euros given by a corporate business? Well, it's a good question, but actually it's not taking into consideration one of the most important elements. Individual giving is one of the biggest markets. Only in Italy, for example, it's around 2 billion euros every year, individual giving. Think that corporate giving in social projects is something around 150, 160 million euros, okay? So almost a tenth of it, okay? So individual giving is the biggest market, so don't underestimate it. And actually individual giving plays effects also on all the other markets, especially because, for example, if you have donors, you have an audience you can speak to, and that audience could be of any interest also, for example, for your potential corporate sponsors. Okay, so don't ever forget it. And another good option, good reason to take into consideration individual giving is that it's one of the markets that had less difficulties or had less felt less the crisis in recent years, where we had years of crisis. Instead, individual donors stayed with their organization and continued to support them. Eventually, even made their support higher. Okay, instead of corporate businesses that tend to speak a lot of corporate social responsibility, but then it's one of the first budget that gets cuts when there is a crisis. So it's probably more corporate social responsibility is more rhetoric than we think. And in some cases, it's even donation you can foresee. Especially if you have members, for example, as Dario was asking before, members, if you know that you have 1,000 members, for example, and after 5 years you do your membership programs, you know more or less how many members you lose every year, you know, or more or less how many members you can gain every year. or how much you need to invest to gain new members. And so you will know already at the beginning of the year how much you will get out of your members. And especially if we want to plan our activities and foresee our budget, this is essential. This is a key. Okay. Instead, if we are thinking about grants, we're always related to the fact, will we get that grant? Will we get that money? And also if we're speaking about corporate sponsors, it's very risky because we could have a wonderful relationship to a corporate business, and then maybe the marketing manager changes or the CEO changes, and maybe even though the project was wonderful, maybe the new marketing manager wants to do something new because he wants to show that he is bringing something new to the company, and so you lose your supporter and you lose a massive amount of money. Okay, so never ever forget that it's risky to have only big donors. Okay, and it's the same as if we consider the public sector a donor, it's the same risk that lots of sectors lived in the past. The corporation sector was 100% public funded in Italy. The cultural sector was 100% public funded in Italy. And those organizations that actually started to raise money before this moment of crisis are those organizations that today are healthier. The others, they face the moment of crisis. They don't have money to invest. They don't have money to hire maybe a fundraiser or to start a fundraising strategy, and that they tend to continue to live only from public funds. But we see it. We have already seen it in the past in other sectors. Those funds are very difficult that they will get back. Those public funds. And again, I'm not saying that I'm happy with it. I would also love it to have those sectors fully public funded, but I'm just looking at reality, okay? And again, this doesn't mean we have to stop lobbying to get more money for the sector and so on, but we have to think also about our sustainability. And if we don't think about it, we're not managing correctly our organization, okay? So we have to consider differently donors and donations. Donors mean more, because a donor is actually, as we said before, an investor. So I get to know him and I can ask him more. A donation can exist also without a donor. Think about all those donations where actually the donor doesn't explicit itself. Think about just think about the most basic one, the collecting box. In for example, the donation box in a museum where you put cash in. You get donations, but you don't get donors. So donations answer to an immediate need of money. Donors do help build your patrimony. Okay. And if we look at individual giving, we can think about different types of techniques. Here are just some examples. We have, for example, direct marketing, which are basically the letters you get in your inbox, face-to-face, legacies. And legacies, for example, is one of those areas that charities are hardly looking into it. And again, we spoke about the church, which has maybe the most ancient history of fundraising, and churches got legacies already more than 2,000 years ago. Okay, and think about there is a just recent study showed, for example, just for Italy, for example, a recent study made by notaries showed, for example, that in the next 30 years we will have something around 3,000 billion euros without direct hereditario, the word doesn't come to me. Direct hereditaries. No, how you say that?
Hairs.
Hairs, exactly. Thank you so much. Sorry, I had just a hole in my memory. And again, because let's say we have much more people that don't feel the need to build a family, and again, they will have patrimonies that they can help, they can give to organizations. And actually, if he is, for example, doesn't believe in any religion or anything, it's a good way of continue to live on a legacy.
Also, like, I think you should include like the component, the religious component. Like in Judaism, it's very important, the tzedakah, so giving.
Of course. I mean, in every
like,
faith base. I'm sorry, I didn't want to keep it just to Catholic religion. I'm speaking in every religion. Also, I work, for example, with Buddhist organization and with a Jewish organization. I must admit, I never worked with Muslim organization in fundraising, but I mean, there. I hope there will be a chance in the future. And also, again, for example, in Muslim religion, also there is it's even stated by religion that you have to give something back, and I think it's 10% of what you get or something like that. I don't want to be unprecise on this, but it's very much related to it. And but again, also all the we spoke before, when we spoke about the challenges, no? We said that fundraising and volunteering is in a continuum. And again, another very important aspect that is playing a role today is that donors want to be social actors. And usually individuals always wanted to be social active in some way. But typically in the last 30 years or 50 years or 60 years or 70 years, where would an individual be typically socially active? In which type of organizations?
Associations?
Associations, not so much, Dario.
Okay.
Associations can be today. And those associations that are actually getting people the chance to be social active today are those who are more successful in fundraising. Typically, individuals would be social active in, for example, in churches, in political parties, and in syndicates. And all those three organizations, if you think today, are in deep crisis today, especially in Italy, maybe in some other countries, not so much. But if you go to churches, you will see most of the churches are empty. If you go to a church 40 years ago, on Sunday, it would be full almost, okay? And if you go to political parties today, most of the people in the political party, if you go to a section, are over 70 or over 75. And instead, before, it was also young people, it was all type of people, okay? And again, does this mean that people are not seeking a social action? I don't think so. People still are seeking social action. But if we are open to give those individuals the chance to play their social action in our organization, we will be definitely more successful in fundraising as well. Okay, so keep this always in mind. And obviously, if those people will be social active in your organization, why shouldn't they be willing to give a legacy to your organization? And again, don't think about the legacy about the whole patrimony. A legacy can be also just a big donation, 5,000 euros, 10,000 euros, or 20,000 euros. Okay. Then we have telemarketing, new media, special events, public events, fundraising boxes, membership campaigns, merchandising, door-to-door, in-memory donation, one-to-one fundraising, ads, direct response TV, direct response magazine, crowdfunding, and on and on and on and on and on. So we have lots of different examples. I will just give you just a little presentation about crowdfunding, because I'm sure you all heard about crowdfunding, and that I'm pretty sure if you didn't think it about yourself, somebody in your organization at some point said, "Ah, we should launch a good crowdfunding campaign and get people to donate for our project." Okay, and so just to give you a quick, brief presentation about crowdfunding, you all know it's a practice of funding a project through a collaborative process of a group of people. But did you know that we have, let's say, 5 types of crowdfunding? Have you ever heard about these different types of crowdfunding? Well, those types of crowdfunding are donation-based crowdfunding. So donation-based crowdfunding is typically as in a donation. You are asking to support for a cause, somebody gives you money, and you are supporting the cause. Then we have the so-called personal fundraising. In this case, it's like a donation-based crowdfunding, but it's not a campaign launched by an organization, but it's a campaign launched by an individual in favor of a project or in favor of an organization. So I'm sure you saw the crowdfunding campaigns, for example, on Facebook, where you say, this year I'm for my birthday I'm raising funds for this organization. If you want, you can support me and give to this organization. Okay, this would be a so-called personal crowdfunding campaign. Okay, then we have the so-called reward-based crowdfunding. And reward-based crowdfunding is basically those campaigns where basically you pay money and you get something in return as a reward. And in some cases, it's more typical to an advance payment of a good or a service. Most of you probably know or must have heard about Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is a typical reward-based crowdfunding, where basically you are backing up for the production of a product or a service. Okay, so basically, and you like the idea, you like the product that is being somehow developed, and you give. And actually, one of the main leverages that is used is basically that once the product will be developed, it will cost 1,000 euros. And if you give now 500 euros, once the product is developed, you will get it for 500 euros. So basically, you are somehow pre-buying it. Okay. In some cases, we have donation-based crowdfunding campaigns where there is also some reward associated, okay? But in some cases, that reward is basically more something symbolic, okay? So it's not the real value of what you're giving, but it's something that helps you in giving the donation. Because when we give, we always have to think that we are making an exchange. Okay, there is always an exchange in action. Somebody is giving you something and you're giving something in return. Okay, and obviously our brain is developed more in a commercial way, and we are used that if we give money, we get something in return. And this is why also, for example, so many public campaigns in places or in squares where you get something in return. For example, one very famous and successful campaigns in Italy is one that has been done by Cancer Research Italy, and it's called the Healthy Oranges. Basically, it would be translated like the Healthy Oranges, where basically you get to these places and you give 10 or 15 euros, I can't remember right, and you get 3 kilos of oranges, okay? And obviously you're not buying the oranges, because if you would go to a supermarket and buy 3 kilos of oranges, you would pay them 3 euros or 5 euros, okay? And not 15. But our brain somehow makes it easier. You give something and you get something in return, okay? Then we have the so-called equity-based crowdfunding. And in this case, equity-based crowdfunding has nothing to do with donation. It's basically an equity activity where basically somebody is trying to find investors in a company, okay? This is also crowdfunding. And then we have social lending, which is another type of crowdfunding, which is basically a type of activity where a private individual is borrowing out money to another private individual. So basically, it's just like lending money, and both sides win something, because the one that is borrowing money will get a higher return on the interest than what he would get if he put the money just in the bank, and the other individual will get a better interest than the one that he would get from the bank. It's a little bit like the microcredit by Yunus. Okay, it's a little bit or the Grameen Bank. I don't know if you ever looked into the Grameen Bank.
And this applies also to cooperatives. Like we do that. Like you have workers, but also you can have funders of the cooperative, so they become kind of associates.
Soci fondatori.
Exactly.
Soci finanziatori.
Soci sovventori. Yeah, and so we do this. We did once, okay, but yeah, it's an opportunity.
And they expect to get return on their investment, right, Dario?
Yeah, and they do.
And they do. You see, so it's really more an investment. In this case, it's nice because it's a social investment a little bit again. It's like the microcredit of Yunus, the Grameen Bank. But in this case, social lending could be also, I want to have the best party possible in Las Vegas. Lend me your money. I will pay you back in 1 year, every month, a little bit. Okay, and so it can be used for any types of interest. And obviously, you would take into consideration: will I give money for a party in Las Vegas? I don't know. Then this is up to you. So this is an example of a crowdfunding campaign done by a museum, and particularly it's a museum in Milan, il Museo Nazionale della Scienza e della Tecnologia of Leonardo da Vinci. And it's interesting that actually they launched this fundraising campaign to raise money, you see, 50,000 euros, to actually get one real piece of the moon and to exhibit it in the museum. And what actually the main storytelling behind it was, let's make this available to everybody. Let's give everybody the opportunity to visit the moon. Let's conquer the moon, okay? And actually this was a successful crowdfunding campaign, you see? This is another nice example. It's the Ashmolean Museum of Oxford, which made a fundraising campaign, which was almost a crowdfunding campaign, to buy a Manet painting. And you see they raised 7.8 million pounds through this campaign. And a little bit like the campaign about the crowdfunding campaign about buying the island in Venice, in the lagoon of Venice. In this case, you see the story behind it, the communication behind it was saved for the public. Let's make this Manet paintings available for the public, and not that some private buys this Manet painting and just puts it in his living room, and only he and his friends will be able to get the joy of looking at this this painting. So you see, it's basically they made out of a Manet painting, a Manet portrait, a common good campaign almost. You see, it's very interesting, I think. This is a crowdfunding campaign about a festival in Torino, and it's very nice because I made it as an example because it's actually a small crowdfunding campaign. You see, the goal was 2,500 euros. You see, and it's about a festival about Slavic music, so Balkan music basically, and it's a festival they did in Turin. You see, and it's very interesting because at first it's launched by actually the curator of the festival, by the guy who invented the festival, and you see they put also some rewards. So it's and it's nice because they made also the let's say all the communication built on this, no? So you see, for example, the first sentence is with 10 euros, you Slavic tovarish, we love you a lot. Even though if you don't have a lot of money, you decided to support our cause, and so we will write you a thank you letter, we will give you a free sticker, and we will offer you a shot, which is called the Angry Dog, in our festival. So basically you get a free shot with 10 euros, okay? And again, most interesting of all is that they know that if you bought this, you will probably come to the festival, so you are also one of the people who will buy a ticket if there is a ticket to buy. With 20 euros, we give you also a T-shirt. With 50 euros, you see, we give you also the entrance to one of our exhibitions or our concert or theater show, whatever. And with 100 euros, we give you a shot, a T-shirt, an entrance, a free entrance, and even one bottle of rakia, which is basically like schnapps in Germany, or aquavit in the Netherlands. Okay, I put into the presentation, but I won't go into this now, because I wanted to give you also a brief presentation about the corporate sector, but I leave it in the presentation because you can still make some use about the information of it. So it's how the campaign is, what type of campaigns you can choose of, what elements make the campaign successful, you see. How and the different steps to set up a crowdfunding campaign. Okay. Another interesting part here, another example of a crowdfunding campaign launched by actually the mayor of a municipality of a small town. And it's interesting that actually they use the crowdfunding campaign to make people participate in deciding how they should use the public funds. So they said, okay, we want you to decide what projects we have to develop and to establish. But we want you to take part of it, okay? So if you donate to it and you reach 20% of the goal, we will put the rest of 80%, we will public fund that goals, okay? And so it's interesting that they use the crowdfunding campaign to make also people take part in the participation process. This is the membership campaign about the library. So this is the membership I told you about, where you would have to pay something more to get to support the library. And you see, we wrote it down even on the card. Here is written: Io sostengo le biblioteche. I support our libraries. I support the libraries. Okay, so to make it even clearer that you are doing this because you are donating. You're not buying any service. Okay, this is Retake Roma, which is an organization that actually cleans areas in Rome, and they involve lots of volunteers. But as you can see on their website, what is very clear is the supporting tab. Here you see, sostieni means support, and you can go and support the organization. And here we have, for example, in the Victoria and Albert Museum, a donation box where you can put money in it. And the evolution today of the donation box is the virtual donation box, where actually you have to tap your credit card to donate. So basically, you see, you have it in the same spot. You have it the real one where you put the actual real money, and the other one where you put you just have to tap your donation, your credit card to donate. This is a fundraising letter by a cultural institution, a cultural organization, which is FAI, which is one of the most successful association working in the cultural sector in Italy for what regards fundraising. And actually, I can assure you that when they established FAI, nobody would have bet €1 on the fact that they would be able to raise funds. Also because lots of the areas that they clean or take care of are actually private areas in some cases, or private villas. So if you would have asked the people, do you, even consultants probably, if they would have asked, do you think that people will give to rich people to support the maintenance of their buildings, historic or archaeological, historic castles or buildings or palaces? Nobody would have said yes, probably. And so if we look about fundraising, we obviously have to think about the target of fundraising. And again, especially if you are in a startup moment, you have to start from those who are nearer the heart of your organization. And this is a little bit weird, because I always find that people tend to be less embarrassed to ask somebody that they don't know instead of asking somebody that they know. But again, I told you several times, fundraising is something that's related to trust, and the relationship builds trust. And I always ask individuals, and I always ask people in organization, why do you think that, how do you think that if you're not able to convince somebody that you know to support your project, how do you think that you will convince somebody that you don't know? Okay, especially, I mean, I work into fundraising, okay, and if somebody comes to me, I was at the beach this weekend, and this guy came up, and he was just with a leaflet, and he was saying, we are raising money for kids in need. And even though I work in fundraising, the first thing I thought was, okay, this is a scammer and he wants my money, okay? And you have to think about this. Everybody will think that you are a scammer, because there are scammers in our sector. So it's either they know you, or they know your organization. So, I mean, this is why at the beginning we have to work on our relationship, but after a while, obviously, we can build a brand, we can make our organization notable, okay? And again, if it's known, probably people will know that your organization is working well, good, and in a proper way, okay? Let's go into any question about individual giving. No. Okay, so we have a final rush into corporate giving. Sorry, I want to finish this. And Dario, if we don't make it to Lido Pola, I will send you something about Lido Pola, okay? So you can share it with everybody.
No, but I've searched already. I was just to share with the others, but I will do that. That's okay. Very interesting.
Okay, also for perfect. Them, yeah. Thank you, Dario. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay, let's go into corporate giving. So in general, we can say corporate businesses don't want to be an ATMT anymore. So they don't want to be a bancomat anymore, a cash dispenser. They want to be a partner. This means they want to be involved in the creative process of your project, especially if you want a massive or a large amount of money. You have to involvement already in the development process. Decision making is definitely complex, but in some cases it's faster than in the public sector. And speaking from a fundraising point of view, this is great because if we don't get the money from that subject, from that institution, we can look into some other institution, okay? And necessary skills to work on this sector is understanding the needs of the corporate sector, having a capacity to produce an impact, and communicate. And this understanding the needs is, sorry, I just noticed. Typing error. This understanding the needs is the most essential part, because we have to change the paradigm. The usual paradigm is I have to understand, or usually organizations tend to think, what can I ask this organization? What can I ask this company, this private company? Instead, they have to get into the idea that they have to understand, what can I offer that company? And a company, a corporate company, exists to make profit. And I always tend to say it, this is essential. If they don't make profits, they will send people home, they will fire people, and we will have other social problems, okay? And still, in lots of countries, we tend to, especially in our world, in the third sector world, we tend to think that the corporate sector are the bad guys, okay? But obviously, if we have this contraposition between our sector and the corporate sector, then we will have a problem, okay? And we won't be able to build mutual partnerships. And instead, we have to think that corporate businesses have needs, and if we can meet those needs, we have something to offer, and then we can establish a rightful relationship between us and the corporate sector. And it's not going to be us going there with our hand and asking, oh, just because we are poor and small, give us some money. Sorry, I'm over representing this, but in some cases, I assure you, I go into consultancies and organizations. The first thing they say, we should find a big corporate organization like Vodafone that gives us a lot of money, and so we can finance our activities. And then I ask them, okay, but why should Vodafone give you the money? And 90% of the times the answer is, well, because they have money. And obviously this can't be the reason why somebody gives you the money, okay? So we have to understand the needs. So if we look into the techniques about corporate giving, we can differently consider those techniques that produce some type of effect on the business of a company, and those techniques that do not produce some effects on those businesses. So let's see some of the examples of those techniques that don't produce effects on the business of the company. Okay. This is an example, a cash gift. So as any individual can make a donation, also a company can make a donation. And here in this case, you see Airbus sponsor of the Edouard Villard exhibition. I mean, everybody can agree probably that can be happy that Airbus sponsors the exhibition, but I'm sure that Airbus won't sell won't sell one airplane more just because they sponsor this. So they don't have any direct effect on their business. Okay. Then we have gifts in kinds. So exactly as an individual can make gifts in kinds, also a company can make gifts in kinds. And this is a little bit a hybrid version of those who can produce some effect on the business of a company, but I will show you later. And in this case, it's basically a project called Portobello. It's basically a social supermarket where individuals somehow signed by the social services, they can go there and get let's say their goods for free. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Then we have those techniques where there is an involvement of companies' employees, where we could get we can work on volunteer programs, and on some examples like how you say, like payroll giving. Volunteer programs are very, very, very interesting, because they give you the opportunity to get in contact with the potential individual donors. And again, it's something that more and more companies are seeking. This is because basically companies are looking into activities where they can organize some type of team building activities or other activities. it's usually budgets that are used by the human resources offices department, the human resources department, and it's actually activities they are actually seeking. Okay, so if you can somehow give the opportunity to workers of an organization to have some type of team building activities, then it's something we can offer. Okay, and actually, again, it's a good way to start to have a relationship with a company. So it's definitely something that I suggest to do. And we have the payroll giving. I don't know, have you ever heard about payroll giving?
Yes, of course. You give a contribution of your salary to a cause.
Perfect. Okay. And so basically you are using the network of the company, the network of workers of a company, and you are basically promoting a potential donation, which is based on the payroll, on your payroll, and basically you give to a cause or to an organization. In this case, it's the employees of a bank, Cariparma, that give to a hospital, you see. And this instrument could be associated to a so-called matching gift program. So basically, the company could say, if you as a worker give 1 hour of your pay, of your salary, I will double up your donation or triple up your donation. Then we have those activities where companies expect an effect on the business. So first of all, we have, for example, the commercial sponsorship. And here, for example, I put a football match they organized years ago for promoting peace in the world. So you see, already promoting peace, it's a social cause that has no meaning at all, because how can you account on promoting peace? But again, this was sponsored by FCA Group, which is Fiat, and actually they said at the end that this match was shown all around the world, and it had almost 1 billion viewers. And 1 billion viewers means something like the final of the Champions League or the final of the Super Bowl. And probably if you would want to be only main sponsor with all the advertising around the football field, it would cost you probably, I don't know, 500 million euros probably, or something like that, or even more. Okay, and instead probably they paid less than 1 million probably for such an advertising. So you see, in that case, they had a direct impact on their activities. Then we have corporate hospitality. And again, this is also another thing that's very interesting for companies. Basically, you give to a corporate business the opportunity to meet potential customers during your festival or your activity, for example. This is, for example, the Piaggio area, the Vespa Piaggio area during the Festival della Letteratura di Mantova. So it's one of the most famous literature festival in Italy, and it has hundreds of thousands of people getting to Mantova in those days. And in this case, obviously, Piaggio wasn't allowed to do commercial activities, but they could make people, they could present their new product, okay? Or you could hand out, for example, testing products or something like that, okay? Then we have licensing. Licensing is basically an organization or a project giving to a company the opportunity to use their brand. WWF does this a lot because they have a very strong brand, so they can actually go to companies and say, you want to, if you want, we can give you our brand to promote also your companies. Obviously, WWF has a strict policy where they control all the production cycle and production policies of the company. We have the cause-related marketing. Cause-related marketing is basically a technique where basically the support of a cause is associated to the to a commercial activity. So, for example, actually the first campaign was what has been done by American Express towards the restoration of the Statue of Liberty. And basically, American Express says, for every transaction you make, we give 1 cent to the restoration of the Statue of Liberty. And this is very interesting for companies, because actually it's one of the things that's measurable, and actually a company knows exactly, okay, we had some more turnover. Okay, in this case it's for example pencils or pencils, colors for children, and they went in support of Save the Children. This other example, for example. Any question on the techniques? No? Okay, final rush. And we said we have to better understand what are the needs of a corporate business. So we try to ask ourselves, what does the corporate sector need? And usually they tend to seek answers to those needs. To manage institutional or political relations. Every company, every corporate sector has to manage those institutional or political relations. Institutional relationships are not only political relationships. It could be also with education, knowledge institutions, religious institutions, health institutions, and so on and so on and so on. Okay. Some seek answers, some type of a joint venture in order to have effects on the business or on those aspects that have impact on the business. Some seek to produce effects on the communication. Some seek some fiscal or economic advantage, and some seek effects on corporate social responsibility. Let's see quickly some example. This is one exhibition in one of the museums in Rome, and behind this museum is the municipality of Rome. And you see we have different sponsors at the bottom of this leaflet, and you won't know them, but the first is Acea, which is an multi-service company, energy company, and but the second, third, and fourth are 4 banks: BNL, Unicredit, and Montepaschi di Siena. And if there is one rule that they teach you in the first day when you speak about sponsorships, and is that you shouldn't have companies of the same commercial area. So if you have a telephone company, you don't want to have another telephone company. If you have a bank, you don't have another bank. So why are here different banks? Because actually they are not interested in the communication, but they are interested in the municipality of Rome. Okay. So in order to offer institutional relationship, we have to have activities that involve directly or indirectly institutional or political targets. And for example, when this could mean, for example, telling the company, if the mayor, for example, agrees, that once we have the press conference, the mayor will be present. And so the company and the company, if they want to support it, and if they want to become main partners, they will be present as well in the press conference. Okay, and so they can meet and greet and become get to know each other. Or having institutional targets in your relationships. For example, it's something that involves also other municipalities or other mayors of other cities. Okay. So this is, for example, cancer research. This is one of the fundraising appeals they send out. And on the left side, you see lots of names. And this is not only just name dropping, but it shows also somehow to an individual or to a company that if you support ARC, you can get in this relationships. You can get to know these relationships. We spoke about universities, and the alumni network is exactly this. One of the main aspects of the alumni network is also managing relationships, not only institutional relationships, but relationships at all, also business relationships. Okay. The second need is in producing some type of effect on the production and on the joint venture. This is the fundraising campaign of the University of Cambridge, for example. And you see here is an interview with Sir James Dyson. Do you know who Sir James Dyson is? No? Do you know Dyson Hoovers? Those Hoovers that are crazy expensive. Okay, this is Sir James Dyson, the owner of Dyson Hoovers, and now much other things. And you see, he supports the campaign of Cambridge, and it's written down in small. Sir James Dyson tells us what inspired him to give to Cambridge and why the world needs engineers. This should be actually rephrased, and it should say, Sir James Dyson tells us what inspired him to give to Cambridge and why Dyson needs engineers. Because Dyson needs engineers because having the best engineers gives them the opportunity to develop the best products, and then they can sell them at those crazy prices, okay? So it's actually probably some type of agreement where they say, I support your program, your engineer program, but if there is some very talented engineer, you tell me and I will try to hire him, okay? Thorpe is saying, yes, gives to RCA too. They have a Hoover in the restaurant. Okay, perfect. Very nice. So in order to offer joint venture, I have to obviously to have production skills, quality, innovation. If the engineer program of Cambridge would have sucked, Dyson would have not given to Cambridge, okay? Activities that can be used, for example, also for course-related marketing, or programs that have an impact on the skills of a worker, okay? So for example, also if you are a theater company, just to give you an idea, we could think about, especially if we have the opportunity to get in contact with a company that has lots of commercial, of sellers, resellers, okay? I could maybe develop some type of a public speaking training course for those resellers, or some type of maybe a theater course on improvisation, and this I'm sure this would be helpful for those sellers, for example, on the skills of those workers, okay? Then we have those companies who seek some effect on the communication, and this is a movie festival they do in Milan, and it's called the African, Asian, and Latin American Movie Festival. Basically, they show movies of those countries, and just very briefly, in this case, we worked on finding new sponsors. And the sponsors we gathered that year was Vodafone and TAP. So Vodafone, you all know. And actually Vodafone, we got it sponsored by the ethnical marketing department. So Vodafone has an ethnical marketing department, because I also didn't know it. I found it out once we got in contact with them. But then they spoke to me, and actually they explained it, and actually it all made sense. They said, well, actually, immigrants in Italy are almost 5 million. So it's a big market. Why shouldn't we have a market dedicated directly to them? It's a market like it could be Albania or Croatia. Why shouldn't we have a marketing thought for them? And in fact, after that, I noticed around you, if you start noticing around, you can see billboards in for example, in Milan or in Rome, in Romanian, or for example in Arabic, or in Spanish, or because they speak basically to those targets. And so Vodafone was interested in our migrant, in our immigrants target, which were 10. We have this festival makes 20,000 visitors in 1 week, more or less. So 10,000 are Italian, and 10,000 are not from Italy. In TAP as well, TAP was also interested in supporting the project, because basically what they were thinking is our target is people interested in traveling. And who goes to an international movies festival? Probably people interested in different cultures. And so basically, who's traveling is people interested in different cultures, and so they overlap these two targets. Okay. So if we want to produce effects on communication, we have to have a brand, we have to have communication tools, and we have to we have to reach specific targets. Last two slides and I'm finished, and then I will free you up. We said there are companies seeking effects on fiscal or commercial activity or fiscal activities. And for example, here is Carrefour that makes an activity out of giving out extra goods they have. And why is this? Does this have an economic impact on Carrefour, which is basically a supermarket? Well, every supermarket buys goods that expire, for example. Okay, so let's make a real example. If Carrefour buys milk, and they buy milk, let's say for 100, and this milk expires and they didn't sell it, Carrefour has a loss of 100. And also they have to pay to dispose of it. Okay, so let's say the disposal costs 10, so they will have a loss of 110. Okay, if Carrefour donates that milk the day before expiry to, let's say, an association that transforms this milk in food, so they can process, for example, food. Okay, or they make out some padding out of it, I don't know, whatever you want, and then it can be given for example, to poor people, or in social mense, eating rooms, so more or less. And well, in that case, Carrefour would get tax credit out of this donation. And also they wouldn't have to pay for disposal. So maybe they get tax credit for 20 and they don't have to pay 10 of disposal. So in the first case, if they make it just expiry, they have a loss of 110. Instead, if they give it away the day before expiry, for example, to a charity, they, instead of having a loss of 110, they have a loss just of 80. So you see, they have a direct impact on their economics. Okay. So in assets to order fiscal or economic advantage, you have to have statutory elements that can be used for your activities. And I mean, this has something that has to be found out in every country, because in every country there are fiscal laws or possibilities to use this in your advantage. And finally, we said those companies who seek answers to corporate social responsibility, and for example, this company just speaks about shared value, which is a new, let's say, which is an approach of corporate social responsibility. And so if you look into, if you want to offer that, you have to know how to work in partnership. You have to know the trends in corporate social responsibility. So for example, you should know what shared value is and how this works, and what actually a company that speaks about shared value is seeking. Okay, and have projects that produce some type of impact. Okay, so we went even a little longer than expected, but before closing this this morning, let me ask you again if this if you have any question. Athorp is saying this is interesting. We are trying to get companies to donate waste materials through a reuse platform. I wonder if they can claim that. Well, it depends on the country, but it's something you have to look into, especially asking a fiscalist. I tell you, in Italy, for example, laws about those opportunities are crazy. I mean, by meaning crazy, I'm saying there are hundreds of them. And for example, every time I'm into a consultancy, we ask also a commercialist, so a fiscal, somebody who works on fiscal laws, to get us all the opportunities we can use. So, sorry, I forgot just, oh no, sorry. Let me get back into sharing. Vabbè, tanto you have it also in the presentation you will get. Here are my contacts. So if you have any question, curiosity, or whatever, just text me, write me an email, or reach out. And especially if you start to raise funds, and if something is successful, just let us know. We're always keen to know if what are the effects of these training courses or activities that we have, like we had today.
Yes, we're like, as I was saying, we're starting now our fundraising process for the IAT. We need to raise a lot of money. So.
Oh, nice.
Nice, yeah.
Well, it's always nice, because I mean it's obviously a big task, but it's also I think the most interesting part is what I told you before. What I like the most is that the fact that you have to have some kind of organizational growth. Fundraising makes one of the aspects of fundraising is that it makes you do things better. You have to become always better.
We have held accountable. We're always being held accountable.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's definitely something that that's an opportunity. And also I always say that especially in our missions, we are not only doing things, but we are also making people understand what we are doing and what our mission is. And if people give you money for that mission, it's the best way possible to show that actually he understood that we are doing something good and what we are doing. So it's also,
and that we're conveying it well.
Yeah, it can be definitely. Well, so thank you very much. Again, as said, you will get the slides and the presentation, and good luck with your projects, and let me know what's going on.